Hi, welcome back to QZ Stories. In today's video, you'll see how an HOA president lost everything, including her own house. So don't forget to subscribe, and let's jump straight into the story. On the surface, my neighborhood looked like something out of a postcard. Perfect lawns lined the quiet streets. Every mailbox stood painted in the same dull shade of beige, and the white fences gleamed like a symbol of order. But underneath that neat exterior lay something rotten. A homeowners association ruled by a woman who had turned it into her personal kingdom. The president thrived on power. She fined people for grass an inch too tall, threatened lawsuits over Christmas lights, and berated families for parking their cars in the wrong spots. Her grip on the community was so tight that most people were too scared to speak up. She surrounded herself with allies on the board, people who were just as cruel and self-serving as she was. Together, they operated less like a volunteer committee and more like a shadow government. The president wasn't protecting property values. She was feeding her own ego. But arrogance has a way of leaving cracks. While she strutted around the neighborhood like royalty, she made mistakes. She treated HOA funds as her personal wallet, threw money into projects that benefited her alone, and ignored responsibilities that actually mattered. Most neighbors had long since given up on fighting back. But not me. I understood real estate, finance, and law better than she could ever imagine. And once I started digging into the HOA's records, I realized I had the chance to bring her empire down, piece by piece. Her downfall was no longer a matter of if. It was only a matter of when. My first weapon was patience. If I stormed in with accusations, she would deny everything and retaliate. Instead, I quietly collected proof. Each budget report told the same story. Rising dues, but nothing to show for it. Roads were cracked, the pool remained closed, and the clubhouse was falling apart. Yet the receipts told another story: lavish dinners charged to board meetings, travel reimbursements that looked more like vacations, and landscaping contracts that mysteriously focused on her own property. And then came the discovery that made me pause. The HOA president herself was behind on her property taxes. While she bullied everyone else about fines and compliance, she had ignored the one debt that could strip her of her home. If she let it linger long enough, foreclosure would come knocking. I didn't rush. Instead, I let suspicion grow in the neighborhood. Quietly, I asked questions at gatherings. Why were dues so high? Why hadn't repairs been finished? Why were financials always hidden? Neighbors started wondering the same. For the first time, cracks appeared in her iron image. Meanwhile, I made preparations of my own. I studied foreclosure auction schedules, checked legal loopholes, and lined up contacts in real estate. If her house went to auction, I would be ready. The president continued her charade, walking into meetings with her chin high, convinced no one could touch her. But she had no idea the clock was ticking, and I was counting every second. The day it all began unraveling was almost too ordinary. At the county courthouse, I found what I'd been waiting for. Her home had officially been listed for a tax foreclosure auction. To the public, it was just another property. To me, it was the symbol of everything she had lorded over the community. Taking it from her would be the ultimate strike. The auction was small, with only a handful of bidders. I kept my expression neutral, letting others make their opening moves. One by one, they dropped out, uninterested in going higher. When the moment was right, I placed my bid. Seconds later, the gavel struck. The house, the president's throne, was mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had weaponized fines and foreclosure threats against her neighbors for years. Now, the same system had claimed her home. Only this time, it wasn't the bank or the county. It was me. When she discovered the notice on her door, her facade cracked. The woman who once strutted with untouchable confidence now scrambled for excuses. Neighbors, once too afraid to challenge her, whispered with satisfaction as they watched her unravel. But buying her house was only the beginning. I wasn't here just to evict her. I was here to gut the entire corrupt HOA, root and branch. And her fall was the first domino. Her reputation collapsed overnight. Seeing her load boxes into moving trucks was more powerful than any speech I could have given. The Queen of Fines had become the neighborhood's biggest cautionary tale. But the real weapon came after. Inside the house I now owned, I found her private stash of HOA records. Stacks of invoices, receipts, and overdue notices painted a picture darker than anyone had realized. The association wasn't just mismanaged, it was drowning in debt. Vendors had gone unpaid for months, and the HOA's insurance had lapsed entirely. She hadn't been protecting the community. She had been using it as her personal piggy bank. At the next community meeting, I calmly presented the evidence. Faces around the room shifted from disbelief to outrage. The people who had feared her the most were now the loudest voices demanding accountability. Board members panicked, some resigning on the spot. Contractors threatened lawsuits. The HOA, once feared, now stood exposed as a house of cards. The ex-president tried to spin herself as a victim, but no one believed her. She had ruled too harshly for too long. Her fall was complete, but the HOA still lingered. And that meant my work wasn't finished. Owning her house gave me more than satisfaction, it gave me voting rights. With the community's support, I pushed for reforms. Frustrated homeowners, drained by endless dues, rallied behind me. In one decisive vote, the corrupt board was dissolved. But that wasn't enough. To make sure another tyrant couldn't rise, I ordered an independent audit. The results were damning. Tens of thousands wasted, debts stacked sky-high, and personal enrichment masked as community projects. I filed complaints with state regulators, turning neighborhood gossip into official investigations. The HOA wasn't just corrupt, it was now under scrutiny by authorities. Meanwhile, neighbors began to taste freedom. Without constant fines, they decorated their homes how they liked. Lawns grew naturally, kids played without fear, and people realized they didn't need an HOA breathing down their necks to live in peace. The ex-president, now evicted and humiliated, could only watch from a distance as everything she had built collapsed. But there was one last step left, one final decision that would decide the neighborhood's future once and for all. The final meeting was the most crowded the community had ever seen. No fear, no silence, just anticipation. I stood before them with a choice: rebuild the HOA under honest leadership or dissolve it completely. The vote was swift and overwhelming. People were done with control, done with dues, done with being treated like subjects. The HOA was dissolved on the spot. Accounts were liquidated, debts settled, and leftover funds returned to the residents. The transformation was instant. Newsletters stopped, inspections ended, and the constant tension lifted. Without the HOA, neighbors helped each other voluntarily. The community spirit thrived, proving we never needed her rules in the first place.